Everyone, and welcome to Module 20.5 to 20.6. We're talking about aggression and cooperation. Here are your learning objectives, and here are your vocab. Short and sweet. So, aggression is any physical or verbal behavior that intends to harm. When people are viewing Americans, so non-Americans are looking at the United States, they tend to perceive the United States and Americans as being more violent. Based on our statistics, for example, 5 times more likely to be murdered in the US than in Canada. So we're going to look at the nature and nurture of aggression. So for nature, we know that we can breed increased aggression. So we know that there's a connection. Now, we're going to be talking about correlations though, and not causes. We have no direct answer to why someone acts, like no specific direct answer to what causes aggression. These are all associated with increased aggressive behaviors. One thing that we notice is that the amygdala plays a really important role. So that amygdala gets the information first, and remember, you have this impulsive reaction that's fight or flight. Well, the flight is fear, and we've talked about that with the amygdala, and the fight, that's your aggression. That's your response to just fight, to be angry. We know that if we stimulate the amygdala, we can increase aggressive behavior. When we look at biochemistry, we know alcohol and neurotransmitters are playing a role, and the thing that has the strongest correlation is testosterone. High levels of testosterone can be seen in when we look at thousands of violent criminals. We see a pattern of high testosterone levels. We also, for neurotransmitters, we see lower levels of serotonin. If you remember, serotonin is a mood-boosting neurotransmitter. So having higher levels of serotonin makes you feel happy. So there's a correlation to increased aggression. We can also give medication to people who wish to receive medication that lowers their testosterone levels, and we can see a drop in aggressive behaviors. So again, all of this correlation, meaning that there is an association, but none of these things have we proven directly cause aggressive behavior. When we look at alcohol and the acts of violence, we see that 40% of crimes committed, the people were under the influence. 75% of all spousal abuse involves the perpetrator being under the influence. That is a high number. So these are strong correlations. And even so, someone who doesn't drink alcohol, but they're drinking non-alcoholic beer, or they just believe that the drink that they're drinking is alcoholic, they have increased aggressive behaviors. So it's not even that it's just the alcohol is physically, it's the alcohol's fault. Like, we psychologically believe that we are less inhibited, we are going to act in more aggressive ways. We expect it, and so we do act in more aggressive ways, even when we're not actually drinking alcohol. So the nurture part of this, how do we learn aggression from our environment? So there's obviously been a lot of discussion and research on TV, on video games, and we know that children learn by observing. They are great observers of the world around them. And if they see an aggressive behavior on TV, in person, wherever, and the aggressive behavior gets the person what they want, that is a positive reinforcement. That is them witnessing, oh, they did that behavior and they got that thing they wanted. I'm going to try that. If there is no consequence besides the person getting what they want, so the person isn't punished in some way, that's going to increase even more the likelihood that a child copies or mimics the modeled behavior. By age 18, this is crazy. By age 18, children have spent more time watching TV or viral videos than they have spent time in school. So, we hope that school has a positive influence on children. Maybe not always, right? But watching TV and viral videos is actually what they spend more time doing than school itself. The typical grade school child before middle school will have seen 8,000 murders and 100,000 acts of violence. We're talking TV and video, obviously for the most part, but not exclusively. Unfortunately, some children see violence at home, violence in public, with peers, and things like that. So, video games appear to encourage aggressive thoughts and actions, and we have some studies that show that. And this is comparing violent video games such as Grand Theft Auto and Fortnite to non-violent video games such as Sims 4. So again, this is all a correlation. Most people, you might say, well, I play video games and I don't do those things. Most people who play violent video games do not act in violent ways. However, when we look at the percentage of people that do act violently, there is an overlap. There is a higher number of those who play those violent video games and who act aggressively versus those who don't play those violent video games. And even if you're not acting violent, it does lead to a desensitization of violence, meaning that you might witness it and have less of a reaction because of these violent video games. So when we look at TV and movies, same thing. Without a doubt, the American Psychological Association looked at it. There was a lot of research done when TV first came out in the US and Canada and South Africa. And the APA said there is absolutely no doubt that higher levels of viewing violence on television are correlated with increased acceptance of aggressive attitudes and increased behavior. So it's not just the behavior, but like I said, the attitude, the expectation of aggression. So finally, let's look at cooperation. So there was a famous study called Robber's Cave conducted by Muzaffar and Caroline Sheriff. And they divided these two groups of boys who were very similar in a lot of ways in the state park camp. And they gave them sporting events to compete for prizes. And within a couple of days, they were competitors. They were calling each other names. They were fighting. They were having food fights. They were physically fighting. They were raiding each other's cabins. So they successfully created an in-group and out-group amongst these boys. Then they wanted to see, could we get these boys who now don't like each other to work together, even to overcome that dislike and cooperatively work together for a greater good. So that is a superordinate goal, where there is a shared goal between both or all groups that overrides the differences amongst the people. And it requires, in order for things to get better or in order for them to get what they need, it requires them to work cooperatively. So the sheriffs created these superordinate goals. One of them was like the water broke and they had to all work together to fix the water. A food truck stopped working and they had to push the truck. Eventually they stopped doing the name calling and all of that, and they even pooled their money together so they would have enough money to pay for a movie night. So these superordinate goals where it requires everyone to push the heavy truck, or everyone to work together in the water tank, or everyone to pool their money in order to have enough money, those are superordinate goals. And the idea was focused on getting that us versus them in group out group to see everyone as a collective we. When we look at this playing out in schools, one area of research has been interracial friendships and giving students projects where they have to work together with people of different identities, different races, different whatever. We see that this promotes friendship amongst different groups. And obviously, when we look at schools and in real life, we know that these boys who were all like boys of 1954, they were all white, they were all Christian, they were all middle class, they were all so similar in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of complications here, but we know that having you work together in a cooperative way reduces tension and promotes cooperation and friendship. So takeaways, remember that aggression is both physical and verbal, and aggression has to have the intent to harm. Remember that there is a correlation to aggressive behavior and TV, video violence, alcohol consumption, and levels of testosterone. If a perpetrator of a violent event does not get a consequence, those who witness that and the perpetrator themselves, they're more likely to increase that behavior because they didn't see any negative consequence of doing the thing to get what they want. The last thing that I didn't put on here would be those superordinate goals. So remember that that's just a goal where everyone, in order for it to happen, everyone needs it and everyone has to help in order to make it happen. So that sums up Mod 20.5 to 20.6, and I will see you in class.